this video, we will be covering the assembly of this board using the parts previously discussed. In this video, there really isn't an important order to solder the components on, but we will show a way that might make it easier. So first, it might be easiest to solder on the ESP Node MCU. There are two options. You can either solder the Node MCU directly to the board. This is the suggested, and this board has the ESP Node MCU soldered directly onto the board. The advantage to this is because these LEDs, for one specific room, are very close to the ESP. And if this ESP is closer, it will cast less of a shadow of these lights. The second option is using these sockets as previously discussed. The sockets were previously soldered. The disadvantage is that this will cast much more of a shadow of our LEDs, but the advantage is we can easily remove this ESP for any kind of maintenance. So that is one option for soldering on the ESP module. The next thing that could be soldered on in this order would be to solder on the socket for the Pololu power converter. The Pololu power converter, again, was soldered like this using the right angle pins, and you would want to cut these using your wire cutters. Just beware that when you cut it, you will always lose one of the pins, so make sure you don't lose one of the pins that you need for the power converter. Now, when the power converter is inserted, it must be inserted in this orientation, with all the components facing you. It should not be inserted like this, with the text facing you, but rather with the components facing you. The next thing to solder in are the 3 screw terminals. Remember your screwdriver to tighten those wires. And that screw terminal will be put in here. Flipped over, soldered those 3 terminals. Remember to have the openings facing you. And the back should be facing the capacitors. This is so that the wires can be entered through this hole and screwed into this terminal. The advantage to this is because this metal plate, which will be in the wall at temple view, the board can be placed directly on top and the wires can come directly out of the wall and into the screw terminals for ease of access. One of the last things to solder on will be the 12 millifarad, 25 volt rating capacitors. Note their orientation. These white bands are the ground. They must face each other because the white bands or the grounds for their pads are facing each other as well. So make sure that when they are inserted, you have ground lined up with ground, like so. And then flip it over, solder it, and cut off the excess wire. If these are put in wrong, the capacitors will break and the circuit will not function properly. Now, the last thing to put in are our 6 terminals for the test points. You can cut these off like we did previously with this one here, just using wire cutters. And these will be inserted in any one of our 4 test points. 6 of our test points. 5, 6. Those, again, are just for testing reasons. If the board is not working properly and we need to figure out where the issue is, it can be tested to make sure that we have the right voltages in the right spots. And once again, inserted, flipped over, and soldered on the other end to keep that test point in. And that is all you need to know to assemble the board for Temple View.